College football is always unpredictable, but 2003 was different. It was scandals before a single snap.
They loved him, but they were quick to turn on him.
What if I told you they were undefeated on the field, but under fire off of it?
Heavyweights getting knocked down every Saturday, and a computer deciding who got to play for the championship.
We have tremendous respect for the system, and I think we all should have respect for the system that we've kind of agreed to kind of play under.
By the end, there wasn't one champion, there were two, and the sport had never looked more broken. This is the year college football lost control. Welcome to our season series, where we go back in time and relive the wildest years in the game. In the early 2000s, the sport was exploding in money and popularity, but in 2003, it all came crashing together in one chaotic season. And, by the way, at the end of the video, I'll give you my hot take on the BCS computers. Stay tuned. The chaos didn't wait for the games to start. Ohio State should have been coming in as defending champs with their star back, but Maurice Clarett was already gone. A freshman hero in 2002, now suspended for academic fraud, improper benefits, and lies to investigators. Just like that, one of the brightest players in the country disappeared. Alabama thought they had their answer with new coach Mike Price, but he never made it to the season, fired before his first game after a scandal off the field. In Washington, Rick Neuheisel was forced out too, busted for participating in gambling pools. And while the headlines swirled around players and coaches, the business side of college football was making even bigger moves. The ACC was raiding the Big East. At first, the target trio was Miami, Syracuse, and Boston College. But politics in Virginia threw everything off. The University of Virginia wouldn't back a plan that left out Virginia Tech, and even the state's governor got involved, pressuring the ACC to bring the Hokies along. In the end, Miami and Virginia Tech agreed to join starting in 2004, with Boston College following a year later. What looked like a simple expansion turned into a messy political fight, and it set off realignment battles that would reshape the sport. Before the first kickoff, the season already felt unstable, and the storm was only just beginning.
The University of Southern California football team making its first visit ever to the Auburn campus. That was a year ago. This afternoon, the Auburn Tigers first on the field.
The season opened with a heavyweight fight. USC went on the road to Auburn, a top 10 showdown that was supposed to be Tommy Tuberville's Tigers announcing themselves as national contenders. Instead, it was a rout. Matt Leinart, a sophomore making his first start, threw for 3 touchdowns, and USC's defense smothered Auburn.
Obomanu wide open, and Obomanu almost fumbled Southern California. Dennis hit at the line, breaks free, touchdown! Galene's extra point is up and through.
23-0. Auburn came into the year ranked 6th in the country. After 2 weeks, they were 0-2, one of the biggest preseason flops in years. Elsewhere, chaos was already spreading. Notre Dame, the national brand that always draws attention, opened with a narrow overtime win over Washington State, but then quickly unraveled. They were blown out by Michigan 38-0 in Ann Arbor, one of the most lopsided losses in modern program history. Arkansas stormed into Austin and pushed Texas around in their own house. Cedric Cobbs ran wild.
Cedric Cobbs, he is a sprinter from Little Rock. He will not catch him.
Matt Jones made plays at quarterback.
And he will take it himself, 3-2-1.
And by the time it was over, the Razorbacks had snapped Texas's 20-game home winning streak. The Longhorns were humiliated, and Mac Brown's team suddenly looked soft against a team they were supposed to handle. And then Michigan. Ranked in the top 3, fresh off wins over Notre Dame and Central Michigan, the Wolverines traveled to Eugene to face Oregon. The Ducks punched first, and they never backed off. Oregon's defense forced turnovers. The crowd at Autzen was deafening, and Michigan's title hopes took an early, ugly hit. By the end of September, the pattern was set. Big names were falling, the rankings were reshuffling every week, and nobody could stay comfortable for long. The polls turned into a weekly guessing game, and the BCS computers were already struggling to keep order. 2003 wasn't just unpredictable, it was unstable. And in the chaos, 3 teams were starting to rise above the wreckage. In the SEC, Nick Saban's LSU team was suffocating opponents. The Tigers didn't just win, they shut people down. Defensive linemen like Chad Lavallee controlled the line, Corey Webster locked down receivers, and the speed of that unit made every yard feel impossible. Quarterback Matt Mock wasn't flashy, but he was steady.
This is Clayton.
And with future stars like freshman running back Justin Vincent,
Got it complete to Benson, turns the
LSU had just enough offense to pair with that defense. In the toughest league in football, the Tigers looked terrifying. Out west, USC wasn't just surviving, they were flexing. Leinart settled into the role as if he'd been there for years. Mike Williams was uncoverable at receiver, and a freshman named Reggie Bush flashed the kind of electricity that brought comparisons to Michael Vick.
10-5, dives into the end zone.
Pete Carroll's Trojans were fast, confident, and playing like they knew a dynasty was brewing. But then came a reminder that no one was immune. In late September, USC traveled to Berkeley to face California. After 3 overtimes, the Trojans were stunned 34-31. It was a gut-check moment. USC looked like a powerhouse, but even they weren't invincible. Nobody looked more dominant than Oklahoma. The Sooners weren't winning, they were obliterating teams.
Fake to Jones. Touchdown, Sooners!
Tight end. He hasn't played any this year.
And today, and touchdown!
Jason White, a quarterback who had battled through 2 ACL tears, was torching defenses with pinpoint throws and racking up touchdowns at a staggering pace. By mid-season, he was the clear Heisman frontrunner, leading an offense that averaged nearly 45 points a game.
Has Bradley.
The defense was loaded too, with stars like Teddy Lehman and Tommy Harris crushing opponents.
And now the Sooners here, the #1 team in the nation, unbeaten. And now they're coming onto the field at the Cotton Bowl.
And in October, they delivered their loudest message. Texas in the Red River Shootout, Oklahoma didn't just beat the Longhorns, they humiliated them, 65-13, the most lopsided result in the history of the rivalry. That was the day people started calling Oklahoma unbeatable.
To Survival Saturday on ESPN, celebrating 20 years of college football. Tonight, the #2 ranked Miami Hurricanes take on the 11th ranked Virginia Tech Hokies. Blacksburg, Virginia. Folks, we go to noisy stadiums all around the country. I'm not sure we have ever been in a scene where fans are any more pumped than they are right here tonight.
Yeah, Miami's won at Tennessee, at Florida, 2 weeks ago at FSU. They feed off the crowd, so this is what they want.
Elsewhere, other titans were falling. Miami entered the year chasing another title, but in late October, they ran into Virginia Tech. What was supposed to be a clash of heavyweights turned into a beatdown. The Hokies dominated 31-7, handing Miami one of the ugliest losses of the BCS era. By the time November rolled around, 3 teams had separated themselves from the chaos: Oklahoma, LSU, and USC. But in a season this unstable, it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. Oklahoma had been untouchable. 11 straight wins, blowouts almost every week, and margins so wide they didn't even look human. Jason White was piling up numbers and headed for the Heisman.
White goal for Pater, wide open.
Bob Stoops had a juggernaut, and most of the country was already penciling the Sooners into the national championship game. Then came Kansas State. In the Big 12 championship, the Sooners ran into a buzzsaw named Darren Sproles. At just 5 feet 6 inches, he didn't look like he could break a game open, but against Oklahoma, he was unstoppable. Sproles ripped off run after run, finishing with 235 rushing yards and nearly 300 all-purpose yards. The Wildcats scored 28 unanswered points in the second quarter alone. By the end, it was 35-7, and the unbeatable Sooners had been embarrassed. For the first time all season, Oklahoma looked mortal, and suddenly the BCS had a problem. Who deserved to play for the national title? USC was #1 in both human polls after cruising through the Pac-10. LSU had beaten Georgia in the SEC championship and looked every bit like the best team in the country. Oklahoma had just been humiliated, but their computer numbers were still the strongest. When the BCS released its formula-driven decision, outrage exploded. The computers ignored USC's #1 ranking in both human polls. Instead, they kept Oklahoma in the title game, pairing them with LSU. USC, the top team in the eyes of coaches and writers, was left out entirely. It was the nightmare scenario. The system designed to create clarity had just created chaos. The Sugar Bowl was billed as the game that would finally bring clarity. #2, LSU against #1 Oklahoma, the official BCS National Championship.
This bowl season. LSU moves center stage, determined to state their case for a championship.
From the start, LSU's defense made its statement. Marcus Spears picked off Jason White and took it back for a touchdown. LaValle and the Tiger Front dominated the line, and Oklahoma's high-powered offense looked nothing like the machine it had been all season. Jason White, the Heisman winner, was rattled. He threw 2 interceptions, took repeated hits, and never found a rhythm. Matt Mock and the LSU offense didn't light up the scoreboard, but they didn't need to. The Tigers won 21-14, and in New Orleans, Nick Saban hoisted his first national title. But out in Pasadena, USC had its own case to make. The Trojans entered the Rose Bowl ranked #1 in both human polls, and they played like it. Matt Leinart was flawless, throwing for 327 yards and 3 touchdowns, while Mike Williams made big plays and Reggie Bush showed flashes of the superstar he would become. USC controlled Michigan from start to finish, winning 28-14 in front of a sea of roses. By night's end, the AP voters made it official. USC would be their national champion. 2 games, 2 winners, 2 trophies. LSU was crowned by the coaches poll, USC by the AP. College football had been promised one champion, one true #1. Instead, 2003 ended with a split title, parallel celebrations, and a system that looked more broken than ever. The fallout from 2003 was immediate. Fans and media shredded the BCS, calling it a fraud. Coaches complained that the polls had been ignored.
My opinion, guys, strictly my opinion, I believe that the BCS is now irrelevant, completely irrelevant. The AP and that game in the Rose Bowl is for the true championship.
And writers hammered the idea that a computer could overrule common sense.
Oklahoma did not win their conference championship game. Why are they playing for the national championship? Forget these computers. I disagree.
The promise of one true champion had collapsed, and the pressure for change was only getting louder. For USC, the split title was only the beginning. Leinart came back the next year and won the Heisman. Reggie Bush became the most electric player in the country. Pete Carroll built a dynasty that would dominate the mid-2000s, and it all started with the Rose Bowl statement in 2003. For LSU, the championship planted a flag for the SEC. Nick Saban's Tigers proved they could go toe-to-toe with anyone, and in the years to come, the SEC would rise into an era of dominance that reshaped the sport. What happened in New Orleans was the beginning of a power shift. Not everyone came out ahead. Maurice Clarett never returned to the stage he once owned. His suspension, his lawsuit against the NFL, and his later troubles off the field became a cautionary tale about wasted potential. Mike Price never got another shot at a big-time job. Rick Neuheisel was out of Washington, his career defined more by scandal than success. And the Heisman Trophy? Jason White won it, but his legacy was overshadowed by the way his season ended. His name is a reminder of just how strange 2003 really was. But above all, the season left its mark on college football itself. The chaos of 2003 exposed the BCS for what it was, a system that couldn't be trusted. It planted the seeds for reform, and years later, for the college football playoff. The 2003 season remains one of the most chaotic, controversial, and unforgettable years in the history of the sport. The year college football broke, and the year chaos reigned. And here's my hot take. Maybe it's time to bring the computers back. In 2003, they felt cold, unfair, even broken. But in hindsight, as messy as that season was, the BCS computers gave us something the playoff committee doesn't always deliver: objectivity. Imagine today's playoff field seeded by an algorithm instead of a handful of people in a hotel room. You might not always like the result, but at least you'd know the system wasn't playing favorites.